Minister, to conclude.
Last Can Corlia. Thank you to all our speakers. We've had, including this week and last week and in the Shannon, over 12.5 hours of discussion, debate, questions on the Migration Pact, as well as numerous debates in this House prior to that, and indeed questions in the Oireachtas Committee. And I've listened to all of those contributions, all of those debates, and been part of them and responded to questions anytime I've been asked. And I suppose I'm so conscious when we're talking about this, as many colleagues have said, we are talking about people. We're talking about putting structures and systems in place that ultimately are there and should be there to protect some of the most vulnerable people right across our globe, while at the same time making sure that people who come here for other reasons, that we're firm and fair with them, and that we're clear that there are legal pathways for work, but that, most importantly, those who genuinely need our help and our protection, that we're able to provide it for them. Again, as many colleagues have referred to, we live in what is a very unsettled world at the moment, and quite a scary place for a lot of people. We see wars happening right across the globe, on the European continent, in the Middle East, in many parts of Africa. There are people literally fleeing war, persecution, starvation, climate catastrophe, discrimination right across the globe, and we have an obligation to protect those, to provide that shelter and that safety. And it's something that I think as a country we have always stood up to, and it's not something that we're going to shy away from. There's nobody here, I hope, suggesting that we would walk away from the Geneva Convention, something that was put in place post-World War II to make sure that every country offered that safe haven and that safe space to people who need it. But we can't do this on our own, because this is a global challenge. There are millions of people on the move, seeking that better life, seeking that shelter, seeking that safety. And so we need to work with our colleagues across Europe. And that's exactly what we have been doing. This is not something that's just appeared. This is something that we have worked on for many, many years. We've worked to develop it, we've worked to enhance it, we've worked to set out all of the different measures and structures that we're debating here today around the Pact. It's not being forced on us either, and to push back on any suggestion that this is taking away our sovereignty, that this is being forced on us. The Irish people voted very clearly when they supported the Lisbon Treaty that when it came to matters of security, when it came to migration, we could opt into any of the measures at a European level. And so we are choosing to opt into measures that we believe, as a government, having negotiated them, will not just be beneficial for this country, but also will be beneficial for those who genuinely need our protection and who need our support. So I would respectfully ask those who say that we go it alone, because there's many colleagues who have said here and in the Shannon that we shouldn't join this pact, that we should do it ourselves. How? Respectfully, how do we do this ourselves when there are millions of people on the move, when this is a global challenge? And again, we're talking about people, but how do we do this on our own? And nobody has presented any options here. Again, I say that respectfully. Nobody has said how we do this on our own. And yet when you listen to what colleagues are looking for, and I've heard Sinn Féin deputies, every single one of you repeat the same thing, we need a common sense approach, a common decency approach, we need a fair, efficient and an enforced system. That's exactly what we're talking about here with the Pact. That's exactly what I've been doing for the last number of years, investing in our system. The first one, that we have faster processing, that we have common procedures right across the EU. What does that mean? It means if you are somebody coming, for example, country that has an approval rate of less than 20%, in other words, a safe country, that everybody would apply the same rules, they would apply it in the same timeline, it would be shorter, it would be quicker, it would be more efficient, meaning that people who genuinely need to get protection get it quickly. There's the same rule applies across the EU, and if they don't and aren't entitled to it, that they get that negative decision just as quickly, making it much easier to enforce our rules and to remove people from the country. That's what this pact is proposing, common asylum procedures. It also means that if somebody has protection in another country, that we can return them to that country much more efficiently. Again, something that deputies and senators have been calling for. The pact means that we have better access to more information, to know that we know that the people that are coming in here, that we know who they are, that we have a better idea of who they are, and perhaps if they do pose a risk, although again we have to push back on all these mistruths and misinformation that these people are coming here to create havoc. They're coming here because they want a better life and safety, but it's important that we know who is here and that we share that information with our colleagues. Again, this is what the pact is proposing. It's proposing that we have minimum standards, so that no matter which country a person arrives to, that there is minimum reception conditions, whether it's accommodation, that we have similar rules and same criteria when we're agreeing international protection. that we have solidarity. I mean, Sinn Féin propose a kind of a pick and mix solution. We'll get information off our European colleagues and we'll send people back to other European countries, but we're not going to show any solidarity to them in response to that. We know that there are countries that are under immense pressure at the moment because of the numbers of people that are travelling to mainland Europe. We need to show that solidarity because we know that we may need that in return in years to come. But also, we can access funding. We can make sure that in investing in our systems, by opting into these measures, that we can actually access funding to improve the structures and the systems that we already have. We also would agree to safe and legal pathways for people to resettle here again. So I ask every single deputy who said they don't support it, they don't agree with this, and senators, what don't you agree with in everything that I've just outlined there? What's not beneficial, not just for Ireland, but for others? And I accept that there have been concerns raised around human rights and making sure that people are protected. And all I can say is at the very beginning and throughout this entire negotiation, everything that has been discussed and developed has taken into account the fundamental rights of protection applicants. In addition, you have specific needs for vulnerable protection applicants, in particular focusing on children. We make sure that through the Pact, that at the very early stages, but throughout the various different processes, people have access to legal counselling, which they're not currently entitled to at the moment, but this is a measure of the Pact. There are also safeguards for vulnerable people, again, building into the building blocks of the Common Implementation Plan, which was only published last week, and which I spoke to my European colleagues about with Commissioner Ylva Johansson. So all of this is built with human rights at the very heart of it, making sure that the people who genuinely need our protection are getting it, and the people who don't, that we're firm and fair, and that we create other legal pathways for people to come here. So it's not that this work is only starting either. There's a huge amount of investment has happened. 34 million was secured last year by myself and my department to invest in the international protection system. We've doubled the staff. It's meant that we've tripled the output in terms of the number of cases being heard. We've seen a 40% reduction of people coming through our ports and airports where they've either gotten rid of their documents or in false documents because of the work that I've been doing, working with our airports, with our airlines, with our liaison officers, with our Gardaí. We've introduced, and I've introduced, an accelerated procedure, meaning that people coming from particular safe countries are getting their decisions much more quickly, and since that's been introduced, we've seen a massive reduction in the number of people coming from these countries. So I'm not waiting for the Pact. The Pact is there, and we will sign up to it with the agreement of the House, and we will continue in this work. But again, I ask the question, what is in the Pact that people disagree with that I've just outlined? These are all of the things that people have been calling for, that they want. We're not handing over sovereignty, we're choosing to do this, because this is the only way that we can respond to what is a global challenge. But I would ask colleagues to not continue, and some colleagues have consistently repeated mistruths around being forced to take tens of thousands of people, around being forced then to pay fines of hundreds of millions of euro, or about this notion that we could pull away from our obligations on supporting and protecting international protection applicants. It's not true. And I would ask colleagues, given the sensitivity of what we're discussing, given the fact that we're talking about people's lives, and given the fact that there is outright racism and divisiveness in our society now because of this, we as representatives have a real opportunity, but there's an obligation on us to make sure that we speak the truth when we're talking about facts here. When it comes to the UK, and obviously a lot of colleagues have raised the fact that, you know, we have people coming from the UK as well. It's not one or the other. It's very clear to the EU, and that's been outlined in the withdrawal agreement, that we have a special relationship, we have a special agreement, in particular with the Common Travel Area. This does not in any way impede on that. We have arrangements with the UK, and they will continue, and where they need to be amended or changed, they can. But again, I would point to the fact that migratory flows change, challenges change, and we respond and we deal with them. Some of the other issues or questions that have been raised, what's stopping us from upgrading our system now? We're not. We're doing all this now. Why should we opt in if other countries are not? Other than Denmark, every other country is bound by this. Denmark can opt out of Schengen measures. They're not choosing to do that at all. So again, we're choosing to do this because we want to work with our partners in what is a global challenge. There are also questions that have been raised around legal pathways. And I mean, let's outline the fact that, first and foremost, inward migration has always been good for this country. But again, to try and separate the two, the suggestion that people who are coming as international protection applicants don't have something to contribute, don't have skills and expertise and knowledge, and don't want to work as well, is simply not correct. So we need to look at it as a whole. Yes, there are separate pathways that people can come, but inward migration as a whole has been and will continue to be positive for this country. And I will finish on this. Last week I had the honour of speaking at 5 different citizenship ceremonies over 2 days. There were 6 actually over the 2 days in total, and 2 the week before. Over 10,000 new Irish citizens from 150 different countries. Yes, there were many people who came here on visas, many people who came directly to work, but there were many people there as well who were international protection applicants who came here seeking a safe life, who now have built a life, who contribute to our society, who enrich us. And I think that should always be to the fore of every single discussion that we have when we talk about migration here. So this migration pact is positive for this country, but it's also positive for those who genuinely need our protection and our help. It's a way of making sure that we have a structure and a system in place to respond to what is a global challenge, and I would ask deputies to consider that when voting tomorrow. Thank you.